I guess I'll ask you about the training to be a qualified Bradley crew at the time. And did you do a lot of simulations like on the computer or anything like that?
Okay, so we covered basic and AIT.
Yeah.
Now that was for a mechanized infantryman back then. For a cavalry scout, they actually do that 8 weeks of cavalry school. I do believe 4 weeks of it's actually spent learning how to fight the Bradley, how to drive it, how to shoot it in simulators and all that stuff. For the infantry, it was more of as an infantryman, as an 11 Bravo nowadays, in my mindset, you're a watered down infantryman. You're not a subject matter expert. You know a little bit of this, a little bit of that. So you know how to fight as a light
Yeah.
infantryman. You know how to fight as a mechanized infantry, how to do anti armor. You know, but you really aren't a subject matter expert like it used to be. Um, but back to the training part. In the Army, we have for the Bradleys, you have what's called a UCOF. It's funny, we all be like UCOF, ICOF, UCOF. It stands for Unit Conduct of Fire Trainer, and essentially, back in the day, what this was an old green and black screen. Mind you, you'd get into this unit of conduct fire trainer, and it was like a I don't know, like a shipping container type idea. But there was a Bradley turret in there where a gunner and a
Hmm.
commander had the actual sights and everything, and then you had a guy that would sit outside that would operate the training unit. And we're talking back in the this was probably developed back in the 70s and 80s, so we're talking pixelated little squares that you would have to turn the Bradley to and
Hmm.
shoot and stuff. Um, then when I 2003 2004 at Fort Stewart. It had upgraded to I can't remember the name of the system, but essentially what you'd do is you'd go out and it was a bunch of UCOF systems all linked together in this giant warehouse. And you'd have your crew would go out and you would do mock simulations inside these simulators so that the command could actually track your movements and everything. You had your driver would actually be in this driver's compartment, and you had Bradleys and you had tanks, you had Humvees, stuff like this. Really cool. A lot of simulated stuff because Bradley rounds aren't cheap.
Oh yeah.
You only fire your Bradley usually once or twice a year during what's called gunnery, and what that is when your crew will go out and get certified as a crew for that Bradley. You'll go out and you'll shoot a bunch of different what we call tables, and essentially all it is establishing crew coordination. Um, but what we always called it was a dog and pony show. Essentially, what it was in real combat, you're not going to be saying gunner, sabo, PC, 1-200, all that. No, it's hey, there's a tank, shoot it, or PMP, shoot it, shoot. But to get qualified, you have to do the dog and pony show, which means
Yep.
you have to go out and you have to shoot these targets the way they want them shot in the order they want them shot, and you have to say the correct things. And if you don't do it exactly right, you aren't qualified, or
Mm.
you'll do you'll be called a Q2, which is a second time qualification. And if you do that in the mechanized infantry, you're really looked down upon as a gunner or as a crew.
Mm.
Um, but yeah, you go through all kinds of. You'll do MBC, nuclear, biological, chemical. I think they call it CBRN now. But you'll wear your gas mask, and you'll have to look through your sight, and you'll have to engage targets. There's one on table 8, which is the Bradley qualification table for the crew, and it's called the Black Widow because you are driving or you're moving away from the target. You have to engage a truck and an armored personnel carrier while at night in a chemical mask. And the problem is a truck is a bigger threat than an armored personnel carrier because it's assumed that a truck would have an anti-tank missile team,
Right.
so they're more dangerous than a PC,
Oh.
a BMP, because a dismount with a javelin, a tow, an AT4, RPG, those at 600 meters are deadly, whereas a BMP not so much. It's the threat matrix that they teach you. But the
Right.
reason it's called the Widowmaker is because you have to engage the BMP and the truck in the time you have to engage the truck. Because you have, I think it's 12 seconds from the time the targets are exposed to engage the truck. Well, the problem is you have to engage, or sorry, you have 12 seconds to engage the BMP, but you have to engage the truck first. So it's the most extreme engagement in the whole Bradley qualification, and a lot of people just don't pass it.
Oh.
So when I joined in '94, the Army used a 1,000-point scale system for their qualification of a crew.
Mhm.
Um, so anytime you said a wrong fire command, or if the gunner didn't acknowledge, or if you didn't put enough rounds into the target, or you would get gigged or you would lose points. And then when I became a gunner in Germany in '98, um, it went to a TPU, trained, passed, untrained. Um, so essentially, what it meant was if you did everything exactly right, you got a T, which meant you were trained. If you said something wrong or you did something minorly wrong, you would get a pass,
Mhm.
meaning, okay, you did it, but you didn't do it great. If you missed the target or you didn't pass the task given, then you would get an untrained. If you got, I want to say it was 3 untrained, you were unqualified. Or if you failed both NBC engagements, you would be unqualified. And there was 10 engagements total. Um, so that was on table 8, and that's where you qualify as a Bradley crew. Um, and gunnery usually takes about 45 days to do. Um, and that would be all the crews in your company, which would be 14 Bradleys.
Mm.
And if you shot alternate crews, then that would be it'd be 19 total. Because every time one of the officers would dismount, there would have to be another gunner
Yeah.
for that crew. And then after that, and then you do platoon qualifications, which is table 12. And in my time, what that was a mechanized infantry platoon attacking a trench system. And what you would do is the Bradleys would roll in. They would do their bounding, overwatch, engaging targets at anywhere from 800 to 2,000 meters. They would get up to a certain point, and the dismounts would dismount out of the back of the Bradleys, and they would go down in a flank on a trench line, and you would enter and clear the trench, and then do a counterattack. Um, and then you would, if you did everything the way they wanted it done, you'd be qualified as a platoon
Mm.
to deploy into combat.
And these were all done with live fire and all.
You would do okay. So in the U.S. Army, we do what's called crawl, walk, run.
Yep.
So crawl phase is literally you walk through with saying bang 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 bang.
Yep.
If you're a machine gunner, peanut butter jam because the gun always jams. Um, and then you would go through and you would do blank fire.
Yep.
And then you'd come back and you would do a live fire. And then at night, you would do only a blank fire and then a live fire. Funny story popped in my head. So The Bradley integrated site unit will see 1 degree above or below. Now, mind you, this was my system back in the day on the A2s and the ODS. I think the A3s and the A4s have switched over to the FLIR system, but I'm not positive. Um, but so a BMP target um, through night vision. So what we do is we take a outline of a BMP to scale, and then what they'll do is they'll put heat pads on that target to simulate where the engine is, where the tracks are, where the turret is, so that you can see it through your thermals. Well, there's a thing where, for some reason, a BMP target at 1,200 meters and a cow at 1,200 meters have the same thermal signature.
Oh.
Well, the reason I bring this up is I was at Fort Hood, Texas, which is about an hour north of Austin, about 2 hours south of Dallas. So
Yep.
if you look at a map of Texas, right where the X is, that's where Fort Hood is.
Mhm.
And it's open cattle grazing area. So cows will come on the range at all times. When the cow comes on range, you have to cease fire, and you have to go out and scare them, close down ranges. So if you shoot a cow during the day, um, you have to pay for that cow in like 2 or 3 generations of that cow, or the unit does.
And these
But
are
if you
farm-owned cows, right? They're not wild ones too, right?
no, no, these are like Texas Longhorns. Fort Hood is 364 square miles.
Mm.
Only about 1 square mile of that is actually owned by the United States government. The rest of the land is leased for like 2 or 3 pennies, 2 or 3 cents an acre
Okay.
from the local farmers, with the stipulation that the farmers can let their cows graze on the land.
Oh, so they're
So,
actually owned. Okay.
yes. Yeah, our our battalion commander, his gunner, had cows on the side of his tow launcher, because at night you can't tell the difference between a cow and a BMP, and I think he had like 3 cows um, stenciled on the side of his tow launcher.
Hmm.
Yeah, so it's one of those funny anecdotes of something that clicks in your head.
And nothing bad happened to the cows, did it?
Oh, no, 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 no. Oh, yes, the cows. Yeah, like I said, if you shoot a cow, you have to pay for that cow and 3 generations of that cow.
Has that ever
Um,
happened in your time?
as I said, my battalion commander had 3 cows stenciled on the side
Yep.
of his tow launcher, so his gunner had killed 3 cows.
Ah.
Yeah. Now, mind you, during training, the 25 millimeter rounds, you use training rounds.
Mhm.
So the high explosive rounds aren't actual high explosives; they just simulate the weight. But still, like a half-pound chunk of metal going through a cow.
It'll kill it.
Yeah. Oh yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was very not a good thing.
Yeah.
But the unit pays for it, and off you go.
You get a slap, maybe.
Like I said, if you do it with during the day through the day sight, you get in trouble.
Yeah.
If it's at night, or if you're shooting through the thermal sights, you couldn't tell the difference.
Yeah.
So
Okay. Interesting.
yeah.
Yeah, I heard about animals and just they don't really go well with thermals and stuff like that too. Especially when
Yeah.
I interviewed the real armor guy who was a leopard gunner. Yeah,
Mhm.
he told me stories about that too. So
Yeah, the thermals on the Bradley are really good, and that was one of the I was told that was one of the reasons why the Bradley was not airdroppable.
oh
Besides it being 27 tons, when they tried to do a fast drop, which was, they'd slow down and the parachutes would pull it out the back. The problem is that the site just couldn't handle the shock from being
oh
slammed so hard. So
the
um,
damages.
yeah,
Okay.
But other than that, I can remember in Korea being able to, pick out people, um, you know, half a mile away, easy, no problems. Um, I can remember one time I used to smoke back in the day, and me and my roommate they had told us to go out and set up an observation post, listening post. Essentially, what you would do is you just send your dismounts out to this in case something happened, so that the crews could get some sleep at night. And so yeah, we're sitting there, and my roommate we're in this thick, thick brush at Fort Hood, and we stop and we light up a cigarette, and we're smoking. It's like 2 in the morning, and we hear over the radio, "Hey, put that damn cigarette out." But we're like
uh,
800 meters away, and we're like, "No way!" And literally, when we got back after our shift, we had a guy go down and do it, and it literally looked like the bush was on fire.
oh man.
Was how bright you could see. Um, in the A3, A4s with the FLIR system, as far as I know, can actually see cigarette ashes off of a cigarette. It's something like 100 meters, I think it is.
Okay, so what about your crew? And tell us about what is it like working with your crewmates, and did you guys bond well together?
Um, all right, so like I was saying earlier, with the mechanized infantry in the U.S. Army, you're changing over crews a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you'll usually be at a duty station for 2 to 3 years when I was in, depending on where you were. In Korea, you were only there for a year because it was still considered a combat tour from the Korean War back in the day. Um, so you had a lot of changeover in Korea. It wasn't by units back then; it was individual people.
Yep.
So you always had changeovers with, somebody was leaving to go to one of their duty stations, somebody was getting out. So you always had a changeover, but you always would get a crew and you'd always be together for at least 6 months. Um, in that time, it depends. Sometimes you could have the best crew in the world. Sometimes you could have just not the best crew in the world.
Hmm.
Um, when I was at Hood, I was on a crew, my first crew. I did one gunnery, uh, and I was getting ready to go to Kuwait in '96, but I came down on orders for Korea, and that took priority over deploying to Kuwait. Um, got to Korea while I was there when I was a driver. Um, I had the same crew. I was lucky. My platoon sergeant had got there like a month before I did. My gunner had got there just before I did, so we stayed as a crew for about 10 months.
Hmm.
Um, in Korea, that's really important at the time. I think it was like 53 seconds away from death. And what I mean by that is at Camp Casey, South Korea, where the Second Infantry Division was at the time. Um, from the time they pulled the string on an artillery gun until impact was like 53 seconds from the border to Camp Casey. So in Korea, it was still combat. You didn't get paid for it, but you still trained like it.
Yep.
Um, I was lucky as a crew member, as a driver at the time. Um, we had to go up to the demilitarized zone, and at the time, you always had one company from 4-7 Cav, 4th Battalion, 7th Cavalry Regiment. They were the Cav Scout uh, battalion for 2nd Infantry Division. But they would have to go to gunnery twice a year. So there wouldn't be a unit up there. So they would take one of the infantry companies, mechanized infantry companies, and put them up to the DMZ. And I was lucky enough to actually, pull my Bradley into the actual positions that we would have, if the balloon went up, as we called it, that would have been the positions we would have had to actually pull into to overwatch the evacuation of the joint security area,
Hmm.
um, Camp Bonafest, and Freedom Village. So that was my, first experience at, real world. This is what could really happen, sitting there and doing a sector sketch of where you could actually have to fight in a
Hmm.
moment's notice. um, so that was really that was a lot of fun. I mean, I know it sounds weird, but yeah, it was a lot of fun to be able to see that. Go up to the DMZ and see the North Korean side, the South Korean side, all that stuff.
And the possibilities of where you'll be fighting and all.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I will put it this way. I have fought in Afghanistan, and also Iraq. I would not want to fight in Korea. Korea will be a meat grinder beyond anything that we have seen. I remember going up to the river crossing, uh, the Indian River there, um, and going into the pillboxes that the South Koreans had set up that already had the sector sketches in them, like chiseled into the stone, into the concrete. Trench lines that you literally had to grab onto vines and pull yourself up because it's almost a 90-degree incline.
Hmm.
Um, the mountain right behind our camp at Camp Casey, Mount Soyasan. We used to go up there and we'd go rappelling off the side of the mountain. There was a bunker system up on top of there from the Korean War.
Hmm.
So, you know, that was probably the one place I would never ever want to fight. On top of that, Bradleys and armored forces are restricted to roads unless the rice paddies are frozen. So,
So very limited with the Bradley there.
yes,
Yeah.
so fighting with Bradleys in Korea compared to fighting in with Bradleys in Germany, compared to fighting in the desert. You're talking about fighting in three totally different environments, and there's three totally different type of tactics that you would have to use.
Yeah.
Um, which I know is one of the questions. You want to go into that real quick here?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, we can talk about. We're gonna segue into
Um,
tactics anyways, so you can
yeah.
you can talk about them.
So in Korea, you did what was called a defile drill. And essentially, what a defile is a choke point or a place where to your left and right are high grounds, and there's only a small limited area. So, like we're talking the roads or the rice paddies, because the Bradleys and tanks aren't getting up into the hills
Oh yeah.
or mountains, I guess. So what would happen is you would come up into this area, you would dismount your dismounts out of the back of the Bradleys, and they would walk anywhere from a kilometer to 2 kilometers in front of the Bradleys and tanks on those high grounds. And they would just walk along and clear to make sure there's no anti-armor threats up in that area or any dismounted infantry in that threats.
Hmm.
If there was, then the Bradleys and the tanks would come up and they would max elevate their guns and lay down suppressive fire as best they could. Um, so then fighting in Germany, we talk about Gunner Heat PC, which is based in Germany. Um, totally different warfare. We're talking about rolling hills,
Flat.
where Bradleys can go up over hills. Um, you still have those what I was told or taught was invisibility lines or IV lines. Essentially, what that is the hill's rolling. So while you're behind that hill, you have that whole reverse slope on your side, or that slope on your side, to come up. Once you get to a certain point, though, you can't see over top anymore because your gun's elevated at the sky.
Yep.
So what you would have to do is you would dismount your dismounted infantry, have them get up on the high ground to see over to see what they could see. Then your Bradleys would come up and you would do, an IV drill. You'd bound like that between the Bradleys and the dismounts. um, excuse me, a story about Germany. I was a gunner at the time, and we were doing some platoon or company training exercises in Baumholder, Germany. And there was my Bradley, and we were playing the Op 4 or the opposing force against the rest of our company. So it would have been us against three platoons, so 12, 14 Bradleys,
Hmm.
right? Well, no, 13 Bradleys. Yeah, the CO, the XO's Bradley, and then three platoons, our platoon minus us. So there was one short. Um, and what we did was we sat there and we used a reverse slope or an IV line. And what we'd do is we would pull up just enough to where I could see the integrated site unit's called the doghouse. That's what we call it.
Hmm.
Not really sure. I think it has to do because it looks like a doghouse, I guess. Has little doors. Um, but what we do is we pull up to where just the doghouse, the ISU, was able to see over the hill.
Is it like
So
a
at this
hold down?
point, we're turning turret down.
Oh, turret down. Okay.
We're at turret down. The only thing up is the Bradley commander from his name tapes up, so from chest up, and this, your sight. And I'd sit there and I'd scan, and as soon as I'd find a target, we would pull up, and we were using Miles gear, uh, which is laser tag.
Yep.
I'd pull up, and I'd have the driver pull up, and the Bradley commander, we would pull up just enough to where the 25 was exposed over the hill. I would engage my target, and then we'd back down, but we never came back up the same place twice.
Hmm.
We probably had about 300 yards of an open field from left to right on this little IV line, and we probably came up 8 or 9 different times in different locations. Each time I'd come up, I would kill a Bradley, back down, come back up, kill another Bradley, back down, and we ended up killing 2 platoons until finally a third platoon, they flanked around us because they had switched over to listen to our they were listening to the radios, and they could hear us when I was talking crap to the rest of my platoon. So they figured out where we were, and yeah, so I learned that tactic at Fort Hood back in '95 from one of the tank platoons that were attached to us, and we did the same type of drill. 2 Bradley platoons and a 3 tank platoon against 1 tank, and that 1 tank took out the whole company
Wow.
because of just how to maneuver back down. We thought we were fighting a whole platoon and not just a tank.
So it's like
So that
deception there.
yes, there's one unwritten rule in armored warfare, and that is you never come up twice in the same spot.
Hmm.
And the reason being is if I have my sights on you, you come up and I see you, I'm waiting for you to come right back up. If you come up again, I'm going to hit you right there. If I back down to where you can't see me, now here's the thing. With a Bradley, it's a diesel engine. Even though we run jet fuel, jet propulsion 8, it's
Hmm.
still a diesel engine. So if you step on the gas too hard, you get a big, huge black plume of smoke out of the exhaust.
Right.
This will give away your position.
Yep.
So what you want to do is you want to back down and then have your driver slowly give it a little bit of gas and keep that smoke completely down. And then you want to move at least, 100 yards if you can, if not more, to your next position, then turn and slowly come up, take your shot, back down, come back over, come back up in another spot.
Yep. Oh, I was gonna say it's essentially what Canadians and Australians call it jockeying.
Okay,
Yeah. So it's very similar to that, which I covered as well too.
nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I said, it's and if you have a section, because in the American Army you always have someone else, a buddy,
Hmm.
a wingman or it's Murphy's Law in combat. Teamwork is good. It gives the enemy someone to shoot at.
Yep.
So literally, while your buddy's up and engaging, you're trying to get that flank shot on somebody to, engage that with a 25 or toe or whatever it may be.
And that's it for part 3. I hope you guys enjoyed the last 2 parts. In our next episode, we're going to be talking about some of his stories and some close calls. If you enjoyed this video and this interview, please make sure to leave that like, subscribe, and share. And I'll see you in my next video.